Hi guys! So, for my last video for Scary Month October, I wanted to combine my love for superheroes and my love for horror. And lucky for me, Venom has been out in theaters for a while, and because everyone I know had already seen it, I had to go to the movies by myself. Alone. But despite me kind of saying it on a whim, I have to say, I was weirdly charmed by this movie. And believe me, I don't like Venom. I don't like him in the comics, I don't like him in cartoons, and I didn't even want him in Spider-Man 3. No one wanted him in Spider-Man 3. Like, I get it, he's edgy Spider-Man, big deal. But what's interesting to me is how Venom, the movie, subverts what we expect from a Venom trope storyline. Because even if you've never heard of Venom, I guarantee you've watched, played, or read a similar story. A good person, like Peter Parker or whoever, is pushed to their breaking point, things start falling apart in their life, and for the most part they hit rock bottom. They are at their lowest point they've ever been, so they turn to this darker side of themselves that allows them to push past their inhibitions and do what they've kept bottled up inside. A classic corruption by power or corruption of the human self story. And so, the initial concept of Venom is nothing new. But this new movie doesn't quite tell that corruptive story. For as silly and goofy as the movie is, in the beginning it shows that Eddie Brock is selfish and kinda a jerk. He steals confidential files off his girlfriend's computer, disregards doormen, and just kinda seeks to further his own career. In several ways, from his fancy bike to his luxurious apartment, he's already so far gone off the deep end, even his self-righteous journalism evokes more a feeling of self-grandeur. He's already corrupt, and the film does a good job of telling him that he's the real reason everything in his life falls apart. So when the corruptive force comes and it overtakes him, this is kind of when you expect all the horror and violent things to happen. But it doesn't. Whether it's because the movie is so ridiculous or the trailers just horribly advertise the film, Venom, the symbiote, the parasitic corruption, is kinda just a walking meme. Because the symbiote is surprisingly funny and quirky. In Eddie's head, the symbiote shouts one-liners and scolds Eddie for his behavior, and his influence manifests into Eddie doing all these silly, albeit disturbing actions, which seem more like they're trying to get us, the audience, to laugh at Eddie, and their banter back and forth seems akin to like a buddy cop movie, rather than a horror, corruptive, invasive force. In several ways, it feels like a satire of what the Venom storyline is supposed to be, because the symbiote does release Eddie's inhibitions and enables him to act on his impulse, but those actions endear us to him. They make us like him rather than push us farther away, which seems like it shouldn't work, but somehow it does. And I think a lot of that work is done with the dialogue between Eddie and Venom. It's not the best dialogue ever written, but the dialogue has a quip to it, and the dissonance from what we expect to hear from Venom's voice versus what we actually hear prepares the joke, followed by the quick cut that allows the punchline to land. I mentioned it earlier, but I think this Venom is basically just a Dark Kermit meme given a whole movie. Because that's all that Venom really does. He kind of sasses everyone Eddie meets in their mind. He's the thoughts that you don't share in person, but post on Twitter. Venom always has an opinion on something, and it is always spoken without fail. And even when Eddie wants him to be quiet, Venom will say it anyway. And amidst all this banter, Venom, like you can do on social media, calls out Eddie on a lot of his flaws. Venom brings up all of Eddie's faults and failings and throws them in his and everyone's face. So in essence, this movie is still the self-corruption storyline, but told through a very different mood. Because with all of Eddie's faults pushed to the surface, he's actually able to grow as a person. He's able to apologize to his girlfriend, stop the evil corporation, and help the shopkeeper, who he's shown earlier to be powerless to assist. The corruption in this case, while still unpleasant, allows Eddie to process these emotions and come to terms with himself by the end of the film. So this corruptive force, which is normally just a metaphor for a person's darker side, it's not just ignored and beaten, but allowed to be felt and understood and put to good use. Which is a surprisingly good message, because I do think there lies some truth in saying that a person experiencing failure and understanding their flaws can open them up to being a more empathetic person towards people in the future. And Eddie ends the film with a healthy relationship to his ex-girlfriend, a stable existence with Venom, and numerous people he's now able to protect. He's actually changed and come out the other end better than it did as he started, which is actually a pretty satisfying ending to the silly journey that started the film. Which is probably why this is one of my, I guess I kind of have to say, it's one of my favorite, and I think one of the better Venom storylines I've seen, if you just kind of embrace it for what it is. Embrace the weird goofiness and the campy horror and the kind of jokey nature of the film. If you're going in for serious and true horror, it's not really to be found here, but I think the message and what eventually you take away from the film is actually hitting the mark, even if maybe some of it isn't quite earned by just a flat narrative story. But yeah, for now that's all I got. Leave a comment down below about what you thought about Venom, and thank you for sharing this with your friends. And I'll see you all next time.